Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books. And in this video, we're going to talk about the 12-bar blues, what it is, and why it's so important to learn. So the 12-bar blues, as the name implies, is 12 measures long, and it started with the blues. The reason I say it started with the blues is that rock took it over, they've used it heavily. You can find jazz tunes that are based on the blues, you can find country tunes based on the blues. All sorts of music has borrowed that chord progression from the blues. And so what that is, a chord progression is a series of chords in a set pattern. And that's what we have here with the 12-bar blues. In fact, we only have 3 chords that make up the whole thing. So once you learn what those 3 chords are, you can play the blues in just about any key. So before we go too far, I just want to remind you that you can download the PDF that goes along with this video in the section below. So make sure you do that so you can follow along and then practice some of these 12-bar blues patterns that I'm going to talk about today. So before we get into playing the patterns, one of the things I want to talk about is a little bit of music theory that goes along with this. So in every key, you can find 3 major chords and 3 minor chords, and then of course 1 diminished chord, because a key is made up of 7 total notes, and each one of those notes can be harmonized or turned into a chord. For example, if we have the key of A, what you would do is you would play an A chord, A major, and that would sound good in the key of A. If you were to play A minor, then the chord that goes with it is A minor. And then each note that follows that in alphabetical order in that key is going to be another chord. And so the resulting chords, like I said earlier, are 3 major and 3 minor and 1 diminished sounding chord. So what the blues does is it takes only the 3 major chords or the 3 minor chords if it's a minor blues and turns that into a set pattern. So we're going to talk about what that pattern is. But first, we'll need an example. So let's go with that example of A major. So we're going to use the chords from A major, the 3 major chords. And so I'll tell you what those are now. So we have A major, of course, that we already did. And you can find an example of how to play that in the PDF. But if you don't have that, of course, you have your first finger on the note A, which is the 3rd string, 2nd fret. Middle finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And then the ring finger on the 2nd string, 2nd fret. You play those together, you don't play the thickest string, and you have A major. All right, so the next chord is D. So that note, if you start with A, B, C, D, is exactly 4 notes away, and that will be important later on. Note D, D major, of course, is played like that. You have your first finger on string 3 at the 2nd fret. You have your middle finger on string 2 at the 2nd fret. And then finally, you have your 3rd finger at string 3 on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. So again, that's in the PDF, so you can check that one out. You can also check out the book Guitar Chord Master, Level 1. It goes through all these chords as well. So we have A major, we have D major, and then the 3rd chord we'll have in the key of A is E major. So E major, 1st finger on the 3rd string, 1st fret, 2nd finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret, and then the 3rd finger is on string 4, fret number 2. And with this chord, you strum all the strings. So it's a nice big sounding chord. All right, so what we're going to do then is take those 3 chords and plug them into the 12-bar blues pattern so you can hear what that's like. So first off, we're going to start off with the first chord, which is A major. And we're going to play that A major for 4 full measures, so 16 strums total. But I like to think of it as 4 sets of 4. That way it's easier to keep track of. So here's what that part will sound like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4. So there's not a lot of changing going on, but it lays down a solid foundation. The next thing we're going to do is go to the next chord, which is the D major, but we're only going to play that for 2 measures. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4. And there's your D major. Now next, we don't go to the next chord yet. Instead, we're going to go to the first chord again and play that for 2 measures. So we go back to the A, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that covers the first 8 measures. So in the last 4, that's where we finally change to E major. And we do that one for 2 measures. And then at the very end, we go back to the first chord again, the A major, for 2 measures. So I'm going to play those last 4 measures all together. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and E, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now A, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you play it like that, that is the basic 12-bar blues pattern. So I'm going to put it all together so you can hear what that sounds like. And if you've listened to any kind of old rock, blues, or even country, this will sound a little familiar to you. So here we go. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, and... All right, so that's the basic 12-bar blues. But you'll notice there's not a lot of chord changes. So what's happened over time is a lot of people have made some adjustments to it to add more chord changes to it, to also add interest. So we're going to talk about the 3 most common changes that happen in the 12-bar blues. So the first one is called a quick change, and that happens in the first line of the 12-bar blues. So instead of staying on A the whole time, we change to D in the second measure and then go back to A in the third measure. So it sounds like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So the next common change we'll talk about happens in the last line of the 12-bar blues. Instead of playing E for 2 measures, we're now going to only play it for 1 measure, move back to D, and then play the A out. So we have E for 4 beats, D for 4 beats, and then back to A. So I'm just going to play that last line. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and E, D, A. Okay, and there's one more common change that takes place in the 12-bar blues, and that happens at the very end of the song. So in the 12th bar, a lot of times we'll switch back to an E major chord rather than staying on A. And the reason for that is so you can repeat back to the top and play the same 12 bars over and over again to create an entire song. Because that E major sounds like it wants to go back to A. And so that pull brings you back to the top so you can repeat that as many times as possible. So that last change only occurs when you want to repeat. Also, in those last 2 measures of the 12-bar blues, sometimes other chords will be included to bring your ear back to the top as well, and that is called a turnaround chord progression, but we're not going to talk about that in this lesson. Instead, we're just going to go back to that E at the very end. So what we have, to recap, in the first line we change from A to D, back to A. Line 2 stays exactly the way it is, where we have the D chord for 2 measures, A for 2 measures. Then the last line we're going to have E, then it goes to D, then to A, and then if we're going to repeat, we're going to go back to that E. So I'm going to play through the 12-bar blues twice so you can hear the repeat the first time, and then you can hear the ending without that E chord on the end. So here we go, a 24 bar blues this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, and... And there you go, you've got a 12 bar blues with those changes added in. All right, so the next thing we're going to look at is how do you change keys? Because not every 12 bar blues is going to be in the key of A. You're going to want to start in other places. For example, B flat is often used in the blues because it sounds good and it accommodates for other instruments easier, like a horn or something like that. But the example we're going to take a look at is C major. So we're going to change our key from A to C. So in order to do that, we have to figure out what the main 3 major chords are in the key of C. So we're going to use A as our example and base it off of that. So we know that right away, since we're in the key of C, the C chord is obviously going to be our new main chord. That's what's going to replace the A from the key of A. But if we go up 4 notes, we know we have the next chord, right? Because we have A, B, C, D. That D is what we're going to change out. A D chord, it would be the next chord in the key of A. So that means we have to figure out the key of C in the same manner. So the key of C, we have C, D, E, F. So where you would have played a D chord in the key of A, you're now going to replace it with the chord F. And then finally, we have that E. So in A, that's A, B, C, D, E, 5 notes away. So we're going to do the same thing in C, C, D, E, F, G. So now we know our chords for the key of C. It's going to be C, F, and G. And a lot of times that is referred to as the 1 chord because it's the first chord that comes up in the scale. The 4 chord because it's 4 notes away from your starting point, and the 5 chord because that's 5 notes away from your starting point. And that's where those chords come from. Because we know in every major key, the 1, the 4, and the 5 are always going to be major chords. And therefore, they're going to be the chords you use in the blues every time. Okay, so now that we know that, of course, in the PDF, you have a full example there. So I'm going to go ahead and play the 12 bar blues in the key of C. So we'll start off with C, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you notice there, in the first line I just stuck with C the whole way through like we did originally. The second line was the same. In the third line, I included that quick change, that G to F rather than just G for 2 measures. And that's because that's done more frequently. You hear that a lot more than just having that 5th chord played for 2 measures. Okay, so hopefully you have a stronger idea of what the 12 bar blues is and how you can start playing it. And of course, make sure you download that PDF, start practicing them, start looking at those chords so it starts making sense. Hearing an explanation's good because you can kind of figure out what I'm trying to say, but really taking the time to understand it for yourself is where you really learn that information. So for more on chords, if you're not familiar with some of the chords I was playing here today, make sure you check out Guitar Chord Master Level 1. It goes through these chords and a lot more. All right, so I hope that helped you out. So please like and subscribe. I always appreciate it when people do that. And I will see you in the next video.